This is the 2023 Prius Prime. This is a plug-in hybrid. So what makes this different from a regular Prius is that this pops open and you've got a level 2 charge port over here. You can charge this in as little as 4 hours at your house with a level 2 charger, or if you're cheap like me, 120 volts will take overnight about 11 hours. Compared to the regular Prius, this has an additional 24 horsepower. We're up to 220 now. So we have the 2-liter gas engine. It makes about 150 horsepower on its own. And then we have a new electric motor, which is more powerful than the regular Prius. And this is putting out about 161 horsepower on its own. Total combined is 220. And range is very, very close to the regular Prius. And let's talk about price. This is a little bit more expensive than the regular Prius, about $3,000 to $5,000 more depending on the trim. So it starts with the SE version, which is around $32,000. This mid-level XSE version is about $35,600. And at the top, we've got the XSE Premium, silly name, I know, it's about $39,000. Electric only range is going to be as much as 44. Now that's going to be with the XE version. The other versions, the XSE and the Premium, you're going to get about 39 miles. The whole thing is powered by a 13.6 kilowatt hour battery. And Toyota says the range is going to be around 550 to 600 miles. That's pretty good to go on a tank of gas and a charge. This does have about 100 horsepower over the 4th generation Prius, and the EV range jumps up 75% because the old one only got 25 miles of range. And one thing to keep in mind is that this is front wheel drive only, and that is because of packaging issues. The rear space is very similar to the regular Prius. We just have a little bit less because the battery is taking up a little bit more space under the floor. Still a ton of space, especially if you throw the rear seats down. Perfectly good for a weekend trip with a few people. In terms of the layout, this is very, very similar, in fact, the same as the regular Prius, but we do have this very cool bright orange red accent in here. We do have these nice physical controls for the heating and ventilation. I really, really like that. And they seem to have done away with the normal USB ports. It's all USB-C, which is totally fine. And we have this optional display here, which is 12.3 inches. It comes standard with 8-inch display. If you go up to the Premium, you get this bigger display, and it's pretty responsive. It's a nice new system that Toyota has put together. I think it's really good. You can take the information over here. You can also put it on the display in front of the driver. Yes, it's kind of in a weird spot. You have to have the steering wheel low, but I think this cabin is really quite nice, especially for the money. A little bit of hard plastic in here, but overall the materials and everything just looks really nice, and I do like the steering wheel a whole lot. So the back seat doesn't have quite as much space as the last generation Prius. I'm 5'9", which means I'm at an advantage in this particular case. I have enough headroom over here, but if you're 6 foot or above, it's gonna be a little bit tight. So just keep in mind, that's because this roof slopes down more than it did before. We're talking about fashion and style, a little bit over function. So in the front seats, pretty comfortable space over here. We have, I think, what are 8-way adjustable. This is Softex in the XSE and also in the Premium. It's a pretty nice material. It's sort of a faux leather, feels quite nice. And these seats are going to be able to go really far back for tall drivers, and you can get up really close. So there's a huge amount of adjustability and range in this car, more than the last one. So you can really fit a lot of body types in here. And these seats are pretty comfortable on a long road trip too. So here we are driving the brand new Prius Prime, and I'm here with Matt Maran motoring.
How's it going?
the OG. You have been doing this for so long. You inspired a lot of people to sort of do your own DIY motoring channel. So yeah, thanks for joining today. I really appreciate it.
No, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so you should definitely go check out his videos if you haven't seen them yet, but I'm sure you have. So here we are in the Prius Prime. Now, a couple months ago, we were in the Prius launch, and I think this is just a really impressive vehicle overall from Toyota. And so the big difference here, which we can get into a little bit more, is that this now is a plug-in. So Prime equals plug-in in Toyota speak. And so now we've got a lot more performance than we do in the regular Prius. Now we've got 220 horsepower. We've got a bigger electric motor up front, and they're saying this can do 0 to 60 in 6.6 seconds. I'm not gonna do a 0 to 60, but we're just gonna hit it here. I'm gonna put it in sport mode. There's nobody behind me. All right. That feels pretty quick.
Good amount of power.
That feels pretty quick to me.
Yeah.
And I like that little electric whir that you can hear too. There's more of that than there is in the regular Prius.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Here's where I'm coming from with this car, and I think you would probably agree. I'm a real sports car guy, right? So here's the big question for me, at least. Is this a car that I could drive every day as a sports car guy and have this as a second car, or maybe even of just my only car if I really, that's all I could have? And for me, the answer is actually yes. This is a Prius, and I could drive this every day, and there's a couple of reasons why. So first, the power is pretty good. Obviously, we just found out. And the second thing is the underlying dynamics of this car, the chassis, the structure, all that kind of stuff that goes into what I think makes an engaging car to drive. Those bones are all here. It feels like a more substantial car than the last generation by a lot.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree. It's an enormous improvement, an enormous upgrade. The first Prius I would ever consider, the first Prius I've ever kind of wanted, you know, like it's kind of mind-blowing, honestly, just how exciting it is, and just the fact that we're in a position where we're all excited by a Prius. You know?
Did you hear that?
Yeah, that was some good little, did you feel any torque steer?
There was a little tiny bit of torque steer. I'll have to do that again. The steering in here compared to the last generation is like a total revelation, basically. It's amazing how good the steering is. So you've got a bunch of different drive modes. So right now I'm in sport mode, and so when you have it in sport mode, you get a little bit less assist from the steering, and it actually gives you some real feel. There's actually real feel in the steering wheel, which I think is amazing. It's fantastic. I really like that. I've done a long road trip in this. I've got another video on it. You can check out the road trip experience that I did. I drove about 500 miles in it, and I got, in the regular Prius, not the Prime, I got about 49 mpg overall on that trip by my calculations. The dash was showing me 51. Pretty rough conditions, like went over some hills, some mountains, and it was raining. So they're saying in this that you're going to be able to get up to, I think, 52 in this, or 53?
52 combined, I think.
52 combined, yeah. So total range is about 600 miles, which is pretty darn good. And of course, with the Prime here, what you've got is a whole bunch of EV only range. You've got up to 44 in the SE trim, the base trim, and then the other trims you get about 39. So here's sort of the value proposition. I think what makes this car so appealing, at least to me, is if I had to commute, and luckily I don't, I live in LA, and I had to drive to work, and let's say it's about 20 miles to work and back, that's going to fall under entirely that battery range. And so you can charge it up overnight. It charges, they say, at about 11 hours on the 120 volt, just your standard AC plug. And if you've got a level 2 charger, it's going to be about 4 hours. So that's a pretty compelling argument. Like here in California, gas is around $5 a gallon. What's it? You're in Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah.
What's it like over there?
I think it's about $3.50 or so, you know, so it's, I mean, everyone, you know, no one likes paying for gas. So I think if you can do it on electricity and you don't even need a special hookup with just a regular 120 and you have enough to charge it up every night, basically, then yeah, it's the best of all the worlds.
I think that's a pretty solid value proposition. But here's one thing you do need to consider in terms of this, the Prime over the regular Prius, is the pricing difference. So this comes in at about $4,000 to $5,000 more basically across the board for this. So you got to figure, how much are you going to spend in gas over, let's say you own this car for like 10 years or something like that. How much are you going to save in gas? Is it going to be that $4,000 to $5,000? That's something you'll need to figure out on your own, dear viewer. But, you know, so it might not be the best equation from a pure overall cost perspective, but on a day-to-day basis, if you can drive on electric power alone, and you can do that for, you know, weeks and weeks, you're probably going to save a lot of money on gas.
It is tough though, because you're starting from a very high bar of the, you know, 50 odd mpg already of a Prius with a regular one. So it's like, you know, you're not spending very much on gas for a regular Prius either, you know, but yeah.
This does have more tech than the regular Prius does. So this has the ability to steer, brake, and accelerate in traffic up to 25 miles an hour. That's pretty damn cool.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the traffic jam assist, it kind of comes down to traffic flow as well. You know, if it's like the really grueling slow stuff, then it can, you know, certainly be nice. But, you know, there's sometimes, though, with any of these automated systems where they're not quite quick enough to react sometimes, where you can still have little gaps where people will cut in, and it just, you know, sometimes isn't totally smooth. So
we actually did get a chance to try out traffic jam assist. We didn't get it on camera, but we found when a car cuts right in front of you, it tends to not see it that well. But other than that, if you're paying attention, it's actually a pretty impressive technology.
And another nice thing is, having the solar roof. I mean, that's something you can't get on the regular Prius. And if you park outside and you get some extra, electricity that way, I mean, that could be another reason to go for this over, the regular Prius.
Yeah, so is the solar roof an option on this, or is it?
It's an option unlimited. On the XSE Premium, I mean, is what they call it, yeah.
So they said in the press briefing that you can get up to about 1,250 kilometers per year of electricity from the sun under the most optimal conditions. It's about 776 miles, I think I calculated. Let's say you go to an airport, you park your car outside, and it's sunny the whole time. You might conceivably come back with a few more miles of range. This is front-wheel drive only, and the reason for that is because of the packaging and the battery and the electric motors. There just isn't enough space, is what Toyota said, to get a rear engine in here, a rear motor, excuse me. So if you really want the all-wheel drive, you should just go with the regular Prius. Here's sort of an interesting story, I think. I was actually speaking with the chief engineer at the Prius launch, and I had dinner with him. Well, I was saying, man, this roof line, the window line, it's so raked. This looks to me like a Lamborghini. And he said, oh, it's an everyday Lamborghini. When I've had this as a press car, people are coming up and they're stopping me and they're saying, is that a Prius? And that's a really cool looking car. Having this design, I think, in this car sort of separates it from a lot of the other vehicles in this segment. So we do have a couple different drive modes in here. We've got Eco, which I haven't been in. We've got Sport, and we have Normal. And I think there's a way of doing, there's a custom, so you can do an individual mode too. We don't have adaptive suspension in here or anything, but when you customize these modes, what you're gonna get is up to 3 different levels of regenerative braking, and it's also gonna change your throttle mapping a little bit too. All right, so now we're in full EV mode, so we should get no gas engine coming on at all here. Let's, we have the cross traffic alert thing. That's kind of nice. All right, I'm gonna hit it. Okay.
That's a lot of punch for a plug-in hybrid.
It's not as fast, but it's fast enough. And Toyota says you can go up to, I think, 84 miles an hour on electricity alone, which is pretty neat. So just that little, when I punched it right there, we lost 1 mile from our total range by punching it. So what I think Toyota does really well in this car is the way they are able to blend electric power and gas power, because you were at the launch too. Yeah. When you ask for a little bit more thrust, essentially the gas motor will kick in, and it's pretty seamless. It doesn't make a big whiny sound or anything, and it's more subtle and more refined than it was in the last generation, I think. I think it's a pretty big improvement here. And also, we were just talking about off camera how the engine comes in, and so my understanding is that it's sort of a torque demand based system. So the more demand you have on the gas, the faster you want to go from whatever speed, that's going to determine when the gas motor engages to assist with the electric motor. There's always the question about why doesn't the upper trim levels, like we're in, get the maximum range. And my understanding is that there's a couple reasons. One is this weighs a little bit more than the SE, and also the tires, basically too. Those are lower rolling resistant tires. And so that's the big difference. So you're getting basically a 5 mile difference in range.
And also, I mean, if you did want the better range, but you wanted all the features, you could potentially, do some type of either swap on the smaller wheels from a lower trim, if you have a higher trim, or just do aftermarket wheels and, size down, and then you could potentially have the best of both worlds, because here in these upper trims, you have to get the 19s and lose out on that extra range. But, I think if you were to swap down to the 17s, you could still kind of have the best of both worlds there.
So Matt, what are your thoughts from the passenger seat? Many people are going to be in the passenger seat of this car.
It's really nice. I mean, I love, you have the lower hip point here, these new Priuses. It's definitely a sportier vibe overall. I'll be very curious to hear how previous gen Prius owners, how they feel about it, because it's certainly changed the entire character of this vehicle. And I think for some people that's great. If you're enthusiasts like we are, that's an awesome improvement. But I'm kind of curious to see, how does the average Prius owner react to having less headroom, less cargo space, and all the extra power. You know, is it going to be something that they appreciate or not? You know, obviously I think the conquest buyers will probably make up for anyone who's upset about, you know, this losing a little bit of room over the old one. But yeah, I love it. It's really comfortable and, like you said, pretty quiet, which is impressive, because I feel like some Toyotas can be a little noisier inside, but this one they did a really good job of making it nice and quiet.
After I filmed this video, I spoke with the chief engineer Sataki Oyo, and I told him that I thought the steering was a little bit heavier, and in fact, he confirmed this. And this guy is a real car enthusiast, and I think what he's really done here is he's taken what was a sort of a weird Prius before and made it into something that is much more mainstream, and I think really appeals to a lot more people. The bigger 2-liter engine gives it a lot more punch, it's got a lot more acceleration than the last one did, and overall, this is certainly not a sports car, but it is now actually fun to drive, and it looks fantastic in my opinion too. The number of people that came up and talked to us while we were driving this car is basically every single time we stopped it. This thing is a real head turner. Now, the pros are you're going to get pretty good gas mileage. I did a MPG loop of about 400 miles, almost 500 miles in the regular Prius, and I got 51. This is rated for pretty similar MPG, but if you drive only in the city and only 40 miles a day, you can basically run this thing only on electrons from the plug in your wall. You can charge it up overnight, so your costs aren't going to be that high. Now, there are a couple of downsides. It does have some road noise on the freeway. That's probably due to the high efficiency tires, but the main one is cost. You're looking at a mid-grade XSE in the mid $30,000 range, and that's about $4,000 more than the regular Prius, and that's a lot of gas to save by plugging it in at your wall at night. So you got to figure out how many years is it going to take to hit that break-even point. I'm going to leave that to you, but you know what? This car definitely does not suck. But you know what does? My brand new vacuum cleaner review channel. It's right over here. But there's just one more thing.
Before I got to this thing, I was writing all the bad jokes that I possibly could. The prime steak, the prime numbers. At the launch, they were talking about prime event?
Prime time.
Prime time. So, but I have spared you all those terrible jokes.
Until now.
Until now, I'm not including them. But, so Matt, thank you so much for coming on this drive with me. You should definitely go check out his channel. You're the OG, probably one of the very first car YouTubers I've ever saw on the platform. How long have you been doing this?
Over 10 years now. So it's, yeah, it's been a while. It was like fall of 2012 is when I started. So it's been a wild ride and a lot of fun, and yeah.
Yeah, he's a total sports car guy too, so go check out his channel.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.